This is the closest that I have to like armored cosplay, so I'm not sure if I can keep this up for all of these videos, but I can at least do it for the first one. Welcome, fellow and future Darklings, to Living for Crits. My name is James, and this is my new series of video essays on how to be all that you can be with your Shadowdark characters. So I was thinking about what I could do contribute to the Shadowdark community, and I've been, kind of bouncing a few ideas through my head, and then it kind of popped into my mind of, putting something together about the classes, about each of the classes. I got a couple bits of inspiration for this. The first and foremost was back when I was first playing Dungeon Crawl Classics. I was listening to Spellburn, and there were episodes dedicated to like several of the DCC classes, and I'm thinking, you know what, we're early into Shadowdark as a role-playing game. Someone's got to talk about these classes and how to play them. And I thought, why not be me? Why not dress up with it's just a BattleTech hoodie and a wargie behind me, and my daughter's Judge Evie's like fake foam sword that sits on the wall over there. Why not be me? So this is the first in a series of 4, potentially more videos of the So You Want to Be a Blank series. So for today, it's So You Want to Be a Fighter, and the name is completely ripped from Quest for Glory 1, So You Want to Be a Hero, and it's also inspired by the Shadowdark game. As I said before, Shadowdark by Kelsey Dion is a game that has got me kind of creative. My creative juices have been flowing. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I thought I'm going to keep going. So I'm presently running a weekly Shadowdark campaign here in the lovely Walls Dungeon Tavern down here, what I call my basement game room. I felt like I was seeing my players at the table, as they've been, most of them are brand new to role-playing games. I've been watching them develop from that very first session where they all rolled up their characters to now, where we're now 12 sessions in, and they have 11 or 12 sessions in. I can't remember which one it is. I think next session is 12 sessions. But they really have a good handle on who they each are. And it's great that there are some duplicate classes, and each one's a bit different. So I'm going to reach back into my 30 plus years of tabletop role-playing experience to bring some of the tips and tricks from my old school days, from the old Redbox D&D game and AD&D 2nd edition, and marry them with my new experiences in Shadowdark. My thoughts here is that this video series is something that new players, it's kind of focused towards new players in a way, someone who's either new to Shadowdark or new to role-playing games in general, and is not sure which class they want to play. Granted, 3d6 in order really does help you pick pretty quick what you're going to play, but let's say your GM gives you a bit more flexibility, or let's say you roll all 18s and you don't know what you want to play. Why would you want to play a fighter? Why choose that over wizard or priest or thief? Or if you're using one of the cursed scrolls, over seer or desert fighter, or what's the one? Ross Godai, the assassin. Why pick fighter? My hope in doing these videos is that those of you who are veterans to tabletop gaming, like me, who've been doing this your whole lives, and more important, that those of you out there, you think about what I'm talking about here, and maybe you add your comments below. So what and maybe positive opinions if you think that that I'm onto something here. Note it, and I guess negative opinions, if you want to toss them out there, it's fine. I might comment on them. We'll see. So let's start. So you want to be a fighter. All right, why are we starting with fighter, you may ask? I had the most experience in D&D playing like variants of the wizard, so fighter wasn't my class. My favorite DCC class for Dungeon Crawl Classics is the cleric, which is analogous to our Shadowdark priest. And even when I'm playing a wizard, I often wish I was playing a thief. Bard was my second favorite class in 2nd edition, so my mind is not often on the fighter, and I have not played a lot of warriors in DCC, so why here? Why are we starting here with Shadowdark? And there's a few reasons. First, it's often, and I believe incorrectly seen, fighters are seen as the easiest class to play in the game. You have a sword, you have an axe, you fight, and that's it, right? Wrong. That is not all there is to being a fighter. And if that's all you think there is, this could somehow, compound on a lack of fun at the table. If you're invited to a new game table and someone tells you, here, be a fighter, and then all they want you to do is just stand up in the front ranks and just whack stuff, sure, that's going to happen occasionally, but that's all you're expecting out of it. It's not going to be a good time. You're not going to enjoy yourself at the table. As a fighter, you are the vanguard. You are often the one most at risk, and you have peril hanging over you at every step. Sure, the thief and the wizard only have 1 hit point each in your party, but they ain't doing anything. They're standing back there doing stuff, or the thief's probably just gone. So as a fighter, you have to be that champion. You have to be bold. And then out of combat, it's the same thing. So when you're exploring, your vigor makes you an excellent explorer in towns. Excellent explorer in the dungeons. Your gear itself might be good, useful as tools in your exploration. You don't need a 10-foot pole if you have a spear or a pike or a polearm or a greatsword that you could tap forward with. And plus, you can haul a lot of stuff. In villages and towns, when you're dealing with role play in Shadowdark, your prowess will bring fame and prestige that other classes just can't attain. Fighters are the quintessential heroes, and there's just so many more. There's so much more to the fighter, especially the Shadowdark fighter. And I thought, let's talk today about how we can embrace this multi-talented class. So let's break down the core of what the fighter is in Shadowdark. So you have the most hit points of any class with D8 hit points. You can use all weapons, all armor, and all shields. And notably, you can use weapons that do a D8 or more damage. So you think thieves, they can use crossbows and short swords, which do a D6 in damage. You're going to have access to those D8 weapons, those D10 weapons, which is really important as a player character, because that's going to allow you to just increase your damage output when you want to just lay down the pain in a way that other classes can't do. With the potential of a high strength and constitution as well, you can probably carry the most gear out of the dungeon. So you're going to be a character that can have all those equipment slots, especially if you have a high con and you have the hauler talent really working for you. A character with if this were to happen, which we know it really won't, if you have an 18 strength and an 18 con, you would have 18 equipment slots for strength plus 4 slots for your constitution. I mean, come on, you're going to be just taking everything. That's as much gear, I think, as a horse can carry. So that's a lot of gear. Weapon mastery is going to allow you as a fighter to just focus on a weapon and just own with it. You're going to have +1 to hit at first level with it and damage, and that scales at every even level beyond that. So at second level, it's +2/+2, fourth +3/+3. It scales like the Thieves' Sneak attack does. I actually forgot about that or didn't notice it until I was preparing for this video today, and I was texting my friend Akash and telling him, hey, you and your son, you have to update your fighters. I totally missed this. So next week, their great axe, Akash's great axe, and his son's what's it called? Akash has the longbow. His son has the great axe. They'll be doing more damage with him. That'll be fun. They'll love that. And don't forget, I just mentioned longbow. So my friend Akash does play a halfling fighter, and he is a longbow specialist. We're going to talk about archers in a second, but your weapon focus item doesn't need to be the typical weapon. It doesn't need to be a long sword or great sword or something like that. You can choose what it's going to be. Grit will let you tailor what adversity you can overcome in the dungeon, whether it's strength based or dexterity based. You can look at your class and see what matches up the best, and don't be afraid to use grit. So grit's an ability a fighter gets that lets them roll advantage when resisting. So if they're kicking in a door and they're trying to overcome the strength of the door, they gain advantage on strength if they have a strength grit. If they're trying to escape from bonds, they have advantage on a dexterity advantage for that, and they have to pick which one. If you're trying to be a well-rounded character with a high strength, you might want that advantage on dex. Don't pick it just because you want to be everything about one build. There's something to be said about min-maxing And I remember those old Dragon magazines from the early days of 3rd edition about how you could totally min-max your character like to death. And there are games for that. I don't feel like Shadowdark is the game that has to happen in. But if you want to do it, go for it. And then when you get to your talents, there are some great talents available for a fighter. You can have additional weapons to master. You can have improved attack bonuses, stat boost to strength, dex, and con, and then armor specialization, which is pretty helpful since it's for shield or armor. You could essentially milk 2 more points out of that by getting a plus to your armor class by having a bonus to shields and a bonus to armor. Now, when you're looking at fighter, you might see, okay, there is one class. They're going to have a sword. They're going to have a shield. That's it. No. Depending on what you roll stat-wise, I think there are 3 main builds you can go with. And again, comment below if you find more. There are 3 primary builds you can go with your fighter. With I feel a 4th fun build that I, especially love. And I think if I was playing a fighter, I would do it. So the first is the knight. You're going to have a sword and you're going to have a shield and you're going to have so much armor. How fast can you get to plate mail, that large shield? You're going to have a long sword or you're wielding a bastard sword one-handed. And you are there to just bring down damage. But your output's going to be, it won't be at max because you don't have the great sword, you don't have the great axe, but it's okay because you have a really high armor class. So, you may have a 14, 15, 16, 17 armor class, lower in level before you get any magic gear. It's going to be very hard to hit you. What I would say, if you have a high constitution, this is a great build for that too. You're just going to be that bastion that stands there and takes the hits. When it comes to ancestries, if you're looking for this build, I would say a human gives you the best chances for the talents that you want, especially that armor talent. And then dwarves have so many hit points. I think dwarf is my preferred on this, but human would be a close second because both of those are going to just ensure the survivability of your character. Now, if you want the 2-handed sword in this game, and this is like the size of a bastard sword. I don't know. This is a medieval times sword, so this is not exactly anything real, right? If you want to do more damage, the Slayer is the path to go, and that's you're going to have the 2-handed weapon. You're doing a D10, a D12 damage. You're going to take more hits because you don't have the shield, but you do more damage each round. And as a half orc, especially with a bonus to hit and damage from melee weapons, you're just gonna chew through targets so quickly. But don't discount the goblin. So a goblin cannot be surprised. So if you want to have that first strike in combat, so the monsters jump you and everyone's like, oh crap, what is this? Well, it's okay. The goblin with a greatsword, since size does not matter in Shadowdark, the goblin with a greatsword is going to be able to just lay down that pain before the round even starts. And that might dispatch a foe. That might dispatch a pretty dangerous foe, or you think about it with how much damage, if it's a greatsword, 12 damage on the first round if you max it out. It's pretty great. So I think goblins and half orcs, if you're looking at Slayer, either one of those would be fantastic. The archer build, so my friend Akash, who plays in our game, he has Biff Dibble, the legendary halfling archer. And I started playing with archer builds in old school games. I started seeing those more in use when I was playing Dungeon Crawl Classics, particularly my friend Andy, who played an archer, a warrior from the Mingol Steppes, who everything he took was based around, or it was based around him being great with a bow. And you can do that in Shadowdark. So you're going to want a long bow as your weapon, and probably that's your primary weapon, and probably you want a secondary weapon of a long sword or a short sword if you have the money for it. That's going to be your backup. You're going to stay in the back ranks and you're going to do damage to your opponents from a distance, and it's a constant D8. Embrace your inner Legolas with this. Be an elf, have that far sight, which gives you a +1 bonus to your attacks, and figure a first level elf with an 18 dex is going to be with weapon mastery will be at +6 to hit and +1 to damage. 1d8 +1 damage every round. I mean, that's definitely more damaging than an elf with magic missile. All right, so I mean, the wizards get powerful later though. So I mean, those early levels with a fighter are pretty awesome. Just note that if you are playing an archer, Someone else may have to plug that gap where the monsters are. We have in our party a dwarf what I'd call the knight build that has the the axe and shield, and that that character Joachim, the legendary knight, kind of a dwarf fighter, fills that gap really well and just ensures that Biff can lay down pain from a distance. If you have all ranged characters, that might be more challenging. And then finally, I was looking at, thinking back to Leaf Smallblade, who was during the summer, I played a halfling fighter thief in AD&D second edition. We played I don't know, like several weekends, all through the day. We went from level 1/1 because it's multi-class. So back you'd have a level in each class that both go up. And you get half XP to each. For folks who don't know about how the old AD&D worked, up to being ninth level and having a thieves guild and everything like that. And I remember so many great memories of that character. You cannot be a fighter thief in Shadowdark. Or can you? You could definitely be a halfling fighter thief in Shadowdark. So my suggestion, and it requires a very particular set of rolls. You're going to hopefully have a good dexterity and hopefully a good constitution as well to help you with that carrying of stuff. And strength is, we'll see. So first off, be a halfling because you have invisibility. And when you get to use invisibility, that's going to be, just get you out of sight pretty quickly. Even if it's once a day, that's okay. And then if your dex is high and you're sticking to leather or mithril armor, you're not going to have that penalty when you're trying to be stealthy. Remember, thieves get advantage rolling thiefy type stuff. But any character can do it. So if you keep yourself with lighter armor, you won't have to. You can still roll. And if you have a dex of 15, 16, 17, or 18, your bonus is good enough that statistically it might work out for you. And pure thieves shouldn't have all the fun. And I think and also choose dexterity as your grit option. And then eventually get that mithril armor. If you want mithril chain, go for it. Spend your money on that. So let's talk about spending money. That's really important for your starting character. So of all the character classes, in my opinion, fighters need the most investment in the beginning and mid stage of the game. So that when you roll gold in Shadowdark, you're getting 2d6 times 5 gold pieces at first level. That's not going to get you much. It's 10 to 60 gold pieces, right? And it's great if you can have a primary weapon like a great sword or a long sword. So you get a long sword, it's 8 gold pieces, and you get leather armor and a shield that's up to 28 gold pieces. You drop the 7 gold pieces so that you can have a crawler's kit. Okay, so you're and then maybe enough money for a backup weapon like a mace or a dagger or something or a crossbow. That's fantastic. Your fighter. I would say that rolling high on your starting equipment is as important, or starting gold is as important to survivability of a fighter as having really good hit points. But what happens when you don't roll well? You unfortunately rolled 15 gold pieces or 20 gold pieces to start, and that's all you have. So you got to start thinking about what's most important to you. Armor-wise, because you're on a weapon first, but don't forget armor, okay? So armor-wise, a shield and leather armor both cost the same, 10 gold pieces each. Shield's going to give you +2 to armor class, all right? So you're starting at 10 plus your dex mod. So you'll be at 12 with your shield. You'll be at 11 with the leather. So the shield, if you don't mind having a gear slot held up with one hand, or not a gear slot, but an item slot. Your hand isn't there for a torch, or something else, or a two-handed weapon. That's fine. I would go with the shield, and then pick something that does. Try to get to a D8 damage. Try to get that long sword if you can. As a knight build, mace and shield would cost you 15 gold pieces. As a slayer build, a bastard sword is 10 gold pieces, and a great sword 12, and maybe enough dex to get past that. A longbow and arrows is going to run you back 9 gold pieces for the quiver and the bow. You'll probably want a melee weapon, so consider that. When it comes to gear, ultimately, I would say that if you're broke or you have very little money, once you get past having a backpack to haul stuff around and maybe some rations, let the other characters bring the gear. Let them all invest in it. They don't need armor. What's a wizard need armor for? I would say shake down the wizard for their money and then go spend that before you go into the dungeon. All right, so we're going to wrap up here with just some tips at the table. So my advice to playing the fighter, from my position as someone who doesn't really play fighters that much. So first off, take command. You aren't a big dumb grunt unless you really want to be. So from a role-playing perspective, especially if you have a high intelligence or charisma, it would make sense that you offer direction to the rest of the party on overall strategy. And that's important inside of combat, but it's important outside of combat as well. Like if you're organizing a defense of a town or a village or something like that, who are the villagers going to listen to? That wiry, weird, like goblin thief back there is picking his nose, or the goody two shoes priest that's probably like doing a sermon or something in the temple of Ord or something. No, forget that. They're gonna listen to to Aragorn, who I guess you could say is a ranger. All right, they're going to listen to Gimli, all right? They're going to listen to the soldier, the one that'll be standing there in the front ranks with them in combat. That's who they're going to listen to. So I think as a player, if you talk to your GM, they're going to embrace it as well. And if you haven't had a chance to be bold like that and to have a big mass combat in your Shadowdark game, neither have I. Maybe I'll do that soon. Discuss being bold. So you need to be bold in combat. So that means targeting the biggest opponent and start chopping it down. If you're a melee fighter, you're going to take some hits, and keep that in mind. If you have low HP for a fighter, like I said, maybe look at the archer build, or alternatively, just put on as much armor as you can. Protecting the weak is really important as a fighter. Your job isn't just to put damage on a target and stand there. Remember, there are no attacks of opportunity in Shadowdark. If you don't know what that is, it's from other role-playing games, all right? The fact that if you disengage from combat, you're going to get hit. It doesn't exist in Shadowdark. So if you see that the wizard is getting jumped, fall back, defend the wizard, okay? And make a lot of noise. Role play that. Don't just say, okay, the wizard's getting hit by the goblin, I turn and I attack the goblin. No, role play. Tell the GM that you're going to make a lot of noise and you're going to roar and turn around and swing your sword. It's really important as any kind of warrior to be describing what you're doing. It's not just, I hit him with my axe. So boring. And then, who needs a torch? You don't. So don't let someone talk you as a fighter into being the one to carry the torch. If you have a hand free, you should either have a bastard sword where you get a second hand on that sword to do more damage, or be carrying a great sword. And if you don't, have a shield. Because if you put the shield down to carry the torch, unless it's an emergency, you are giving up like some key ability that you have. It's like asking a wizard not to take advantage on their magic missile spell. Why would they do that? Why would you not have a shield or a greatsword? You need to have that. When the other party members are talking to you, after they ask you to have it to carry a torch, they might try to boss you around. Don't be talked into traps, all right? Even though that you are the big warrior, you are not a mindless fool. You are a wise instrument of warfare. So don't consent to the demands of other player characters at the table that you have to be the one that goes in if you don't think it's a good idea. Granted, oftentimes it might be a good idea that you're the first one to go in. You're going to have the most hit points probably over time, and you're going to have the best armor. You might need to take that hit. But if you don't think it's a good idea, you are not a hireling. And this is where, personally I watch fighters and warriors when I've done one-shots and such, at conventions where, the lesser experienced person is taking that position, taking that role, and they are just kind of, being told where to go. It's one thing I like from Dungeon Crawl Classics, and the warrior has mighty deeds and they can be descriptive of their actions. We don't have mighty deeds here in Shadowdark, but it doesn't mean you can't be descriptive in what you do, and doesn't mean you have to, you need to make everything you do interesting and entertaining at the table. At least I think you do. All right, so and then finally, convince the party that they should be investing in you. What is another crawler's kit cost, right? If a thief needs a refill, 7 gold pieces. Plate mail is $150. All right, so when you're divvying up treasure, the unless you're buying magical gear from some wandering merchant or something like that, consider having the rest of the party invest in what you need, because what you need will protect them. So that means that they're contributing to the fighters plate mail fund, the fighters greatsword fund, the fighters longbow fund, getting you more arrows. They should be doing that. And then when you get magic gear and weapons, keep that in mind too. If there's a magic sword, like even a magic short sword, and the bonus is really good, and the thief's like, I'm gonna take it. Yeah, it's only a D6 damage, but it might be better in your hands. So just what the item is, but make sure when it comes to weapons and armor that the party is thinking about you, because as Shadowdark advances, the wizard's going to start getting some really cool spells, as is the priest, and you're going to want some cool gear to make your character interesting in a higher level play. The thief's going to want the same thing. Both the thieves and the fighters, their progression is a bit more linear, whereas the wizard and the priest, they have access to magic, and it's going to be different for them. So, in conclusion, the fighter isn't the class you pick up because you can't make up your mind. It's the class you pick up that you start because you want to be the champion, the warden, the slayer of beasts fell and terrible. That's why you should be a fighter. That's why you should start as a fighter. And ultimately, these are just my thoughts, right? So I'd love to hear yours. How would you build and play a fighter in Shadowdark, or any other old school RPG for that matter? And just, comment below. Add some notes down there. What did I miss, any builds that you could think of? And we'll see how this goes. And I'm committing myself to do 3 more of these to cover the wizard, priest, and thief. And who knows? There are a lot of other character classes in Shadowdark, like the new ranger and bard, and some of the ones that are from the crawling, the what are they called? The Cursed Scroll zines. So maybe they'll be out there. We'll see. So thank you so much for spending time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful week gaming.